PowerPoint. So before we get onto any new material, let's cover what we already know. We know that every cell contains a set of instructions to keep itself running. That is, to do the jobs it needs to do to be alive, to repair itself, and to make more of itself, that is, to reproduce. It could be to reproduce just an individual cell, or it could be part of reproducing a whole multicellular organism. We know already that those instructions are stored in the molecule of DNA. And I think I've already said that every time a cell divides, a full set of those instructions has to be copied into the new cell. Remember that you can't just give half of the instructions to the new cell and keep half for yourself, because what if you need the information on page 100 and you've only got up to page 50? So every time a cell divides, the total amount of information has to be copied. One copy is kept by the old cell, and one copy is given to the new cell. So going back to our book analogy, think of the instructions in a cell as being a book must be photocopied. Here is a Subaru Owner's Workshop manual, and we can use this as our analogy for the complete set of instructions inside a cell held in the DNA. All right, well, we know that DNA is a very long molecule, a ridiculously long molecule. And that causes a problem because it is so long and it's crammed into such a small space that during the division of a cell, that is when one little cell splits into two even smaller cells of roughly half the size, not only is copying going to be a problem, but making sure that these incredibly long and tangled strands actually get correctly from one cell to another without getting tangled up, without getting broken, without getting mixed together is a big issue. And so a DNA molecule is knitted together into a more compact form before cell division happens. And that compact knitted form is called a chromosome. We have already briefly met chromosomes in the previous in a previous PowerPoint, and they have a characteristic X shape. Now here is one chromosome. It looks a bit like a mutant sausage or 4 mutant sausages, but in fact it is, there we go, you can see that's one side of the X, another side of the X, and then they're joined in the middle. Now I'm talking here about eukaryotic DNA. DNA in prokaryotes does not get packaged in this X shape. And prokaryotes do not reproduce sexually. They are single individual cells, and we're not going to really be referring to prokaryotes in this lesson about chromosomes. In fact, all of our discussions of chromosomes are really about eukaryotes. All right, well, this is now into new material. What does a chromosome look like? Well, like all things in biology, even these very small parts get names. And so each arm of a chromosome is called a chromatid and is made of a single molecule of DNA. And a chromatid is really a page of DNA code. When you have two sister chromatids, then you can consider them to be the photocopies of each other. I think a diagram is going to help us here. So here is our chromosome. This, if I look down the left-hand arm, that is one chromatid, and here is the sister chromatid. But this arm here is a photocopy of that one. They are 99-point-something% of the time perfect photocopies, and they are stapled together at the centromere. It's obviously not a metal staple out of a device on your desk. It's a piece of protein. and it holds those two sister chromatids together. There's another piece of protein we need to talk about, or another kind of protein we need to talk about, and they're called histones. And remember that that long DNA molecule is knitted together, and it doesn't hold its knitted shape without some help, and the help comes from these proteins called histones. Now, here is a diagram which I will go through with you. There is our X-shaped chromosome. You can see a chromatid on the right-hand side and the sister chromatid on the left-hand side, and there's the centromere in the middle. You can also see where the chromosome is located. There is the plasma membrane around the outside, and here is the nucleus, and we can see a whole bunch of little X shapes inside, little chromosomes inside. If we go back to our chromosome and we zoom in closer, you'll see that you can unravel the chromosome a little bit like if you've ever had a woolen jumper and you've got a cut in it, you'll find that you can actually start pulling on the wool and you'll completely unwrap your jumper eventually. But that wrapping is not random. It's not stuffed together. It's actually carefully and closely compiled, constructed, and you can see that the DNA, so if you go to the smallest end, there's the DNA. How does it get into this knitted shape? Well, it gets into the knitted shape by being wrapped around these histone proteins. So there's not just one of them, there's many, many, many. There will be millions or hundreds of millions of individual histone proteins for one chromatid. And they're holding the DNA into that classic chromosome shape. Okay, well, that's the basic structure of a chromosome. Let's talk about groups of chromosomes. So if we leave the microstructure of chromosomes and DNA and histones and centromeres, what do we get if we look at a cell with whole lots of chromosomes? Well, each cell has to have a full set. We're using the analogy of a book of chromosomes containing all the operating instructions. Fine. We've already seen that, and so it's a bit of revision. We give the symbol N to describe one full set of instructions. In that set, there will be a number of pages. So if we use our manual analogy, this is all the DNA, all the instructions in a single cell. If we were to open it up, which I can't do because this is in 2D, but if we were to open that up, we'd find a whole bunch of pages. And the total set of pages makes up that instruction manual. So in the case of humans, we have 23 pages, that is 23 chromosomes, making up one full set of instructions. So N is 23. Dogs, for dogs, N is 39. That is, there are 39 pages to make up the dog instruction manual. And for a potato, a much simpler organism, you'd think, 24 pages. In fact, somewhat more than humans. So we can learn another lesson here, that is, don't pay too much attention to the number of pages and the number of chromosomes. They do not give a good idea of the complexity of the organism, as we will see later on. Humans are clearly more complex than potato plants, but we actually have less pages. All right, well, here's a weird word for you, ploidy. What does that mean? Well, most cells in an organism that reproduces sexually don't have a single set of chromosomes. They have two full sets of chromosomes because mum gave a full set of instructions and dad gave a full set. So there's one from each parent. So now we have in each cell not one manual, but two complete manuals. So note that the first instruction manual was not incomplete. There were no pages missing. It's just that dad wanted to give a full set and mum wanted to give a full set too. Well, now, if there's two full sets of instructions, the symbol is 2n because there's two complete manuals. And so, obviously, if n is 23 for humans, then 2n for humans is 46. For dogs, 2n is 78. And for potatoes, 2n is 48. So double, in each case, double the n number, the number of pages for just one instruction manual. So the number of full sets of chromosomes in a cell is called its ploidy. A cell which has only one set are called haploid cells, and a cell which has two sets are called diploid. Most of the cells in a multicellular, sexually reproducing organism will be diploid. But there is a very small number and a very important number of haploid cells, which we will meet shortly. So, which leads us to this concept of cell types. Now, you already know that there's all sorts of cell types in a human. Let's take humans as an example. We have brain cells and kidney cells and liver cells, and eye cells, blood cells, and on it goes. Dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of cell types. But all of those cell types can really be divided into two broad categories. Somatic cells are the ones that make up most of the organism, and they are all the ones I just talked about, the brains and the kidney and the liver and the pancreas and the cells in your ear and so forth. And they have a ploidy of 2n, meaning they have two instruction manuals in every cell. But gametes, they are sex cells, such as sperm or ova, and they only have one set of instructions. So they have a ploidy of n. Remember that there's an invisible 1 in front of the n there, so instead of a 2. All right, well, that pretty much covers our introduction to chromosomes. I'm leaving you here with some questions to reinforce your what I've just covered. And I do hope that you will do those. It's not a difficult exercise, but I think you'll learn some interesting things by doing it and reinforce the content that we've covered. And then finally, if you want to check up with Pearson, you can find more information on what I've just covered and a different angle on what I've just covered to help you come to terms with the basic instructions about chromosomes. Next PowerPoint, we will look at karyotypes.